Hey guys, so right off the bat, the first thing I love about this episode is that carrying over from last week's episode, I feel there's a lot more build up towards the eventual scene of Basson pleading with Yo and the others to help Ren and just Yo and the others like generally just kind of just from storming the Tao compound. Because if I remember correctly, the original anime had it where it showed Ren fighting some zombies, encountering his father, and then immediately cut to Basson begging the others for help. Whereas here, it pretty much generally, it more or less played out generally the same way, but I feel just by virtue of getting a little bit more of the just a tiny little bit more between the confrontation of Ren and his father, it builds En up as a much more powerful threat, and even builds upon this greater sense of danger that comes with choosing to fight him, even before you and the others arrive. There pretty much isn't really that much of a difference between well, pretty much between the original anime, how things played out in the original anime, and the reboot. But I feel with the reboot, there was just enough of little moments and little dialogue, little scenes, little things added that really just kind of built up and as a much more powerful and dangerous threat, I think. And and honestly, like just on the general level, because this version of N is the more manga faithful version of the character, I do overall get this greater sense of why this is someone who has every right to be as feared among his own family as he is. Whereas in the original anime, the things that were supposed to make him a threat almost felt downplayed and honestly left him kind of forgettable in the original anime. Like after the whole battle with pretty much end in the original anime, I was like, okay, that happened. Moving on. But again, I feel the reboot is giving us like just enough of something new to kind of latch onto him with his character and a greater sense of why he's so dangerous. Like, this is a man who truly believes in the singular rule of the Tao family: destroy or be destroyed. Those are his absolutes, even if he has to drill those beliefs into his own children. And now, with that said, I do admit I kind of like more. One thing I do kind of like more in the original anime compared to the manga reboot is that it makes it a little less obvious that ends enlarged form is like is a version of Oversoul, and it's one of those cases where as weird as it is, I first think because the original anime had a lower budget to work with, it forced the studio in order to get a little more creative. So instead of showing things like spirit aura, what they did is they made it where En's entire body looked like it was shaped out of some like it was like he was made out of some invisible shape changing force or putty or something like that. But which again, it's one of those things where it ought to be a little more creative and just kind of added a little bit more to the mystery of just, okay, what exactly is N's form. But here, because we can clearly see the spirit energy rating off of N when pretty much Ren like pierces him, we know what it is. So it does make it a little more questionable that Ren couldn't immediately figure out what was going on. Again, it's one of those weird things about this series where I'm finding that there's a lot more about this series that does require a bit of suspension of disbelief in terms of how characters act or how characters like end up responding to certain things. And that is kind of one of those things where I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a little more obvious if you really look at it, but I guess I guess I guess I guess I guess I guess it still makes sense in the sense where this is the only form that Prince Ren has gotten to know of his father, so he doesn't know exactly what it is. I guess that's it, but yeah, again, a little bit of suspension of disbelief, but it still works. And yeah, it is interesting to see Ren's growth in this episode in the sense where, in a lot of ways, he has already freed himself from his father, but at the same time, until he finally defeats En, he won't be able to truly move on, which is also interesting when you when you look at the contrast as well, Ren was able to let go of his anger, his rage, everything that was drilled into him by his father, and learned that his family's past, his family legacy, does not define him. He's at this point, he's really only doing this, like he even said himself, the only reason as to why he's choosing to confront N at all is because he wants to like officially bury the past, and on top of that also feeling this is the only way I can atone for my sins is by defeating my father. Whereas N has been so haunted by the teachings and the past of the Tao family, that everything he was brought up in has practically consumed all that he is, both figuratively and literally, to the point where it's all he knows, and his only purpose to basically to that point is where he's not only accepted his sins, but he's almost tried to like he's tried to legitimize his pretty much his sins through his actions, like because in his it's in his own weird demented way he believes indoctrinating and drilling every single thing he's believed in into his children is the only way he can protect them. Like again, it's a weird thing to say, but this pretty much is pretty much Ren is pretty much is N's way. This in a weird demented way. This is N's way of showing his pretty much his pretty much caring side, and how his love for his children is. Whereas again, it's twisted, it's demented, but at the same time, like when you look at the, I guess like the past of the Tao family is so twisted that it's not something you should condone, but it is something we should condone, but it is something you can understand as to why he's doing all this. With that said, one thing I realized, at least about this portion of the story until now, at least one thing I never realized, at least until this portion of the story until now, is that it not only fixes the sort of reckless main character problem that arguably has dominated modern shonen like DBZ, Naruto, and onwards, but it also kind of fixed the fodder character problem as well. For example, during the whole sequence that Basson was explaining the schematics of the Tao compound, that would have been like the time that the shonen protagonist would have barged in without a care and cause complete consequences. Again, not caring about the consequences at all. And while that still did technically happen, it was presented in a way where them barging in was done with that knowledge of what the danger was, and there was still this sort of air of caution that Yo and the others ended up still taking with their approach when first stepping into the compound, and we're about to see that happen like next episode pretty much. Now in terms of how the episode deals with the fodder problem, it does it in the form of N's Royal Guard, because let's be real, aside from the one in white, that's pretty much really what they are, a stepping stone to N. However, how these guys basically fix the fodder problem is by virtue of them being an elite fighting force. Like it shows that even the fodder are just as dangerous as N himself, and don't get me wrong, even though they got dusted pretty easily just by Horo and Ryu in this episode, if you really look at the circumstances, but both Horo and Ryu were basically forced to use their more advanced techniques right at the gate in order to defeat just from two of N's Royal Guards, and that in itself shows that they pretty much recognize how pretty much strong N's elite forces are. Like that is something we're seeing here, but we're about to see exactly how true that is next episode with the Man in White, which that's going to be interesting to talk about for sure. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll, and be sure to hit the bell for notifications, subscribe, and just share this around, guys. Dead Night of NA, signing off. Later, guys.